the board, I'd like to welcome each and every one here tonight. First of all, I'd like to welcome our new board members. District 2, Mr. Loretta Eubanks. District 4, Mr. Matt McGann. Number 6, Jason Jenkins. Number 8, Mr. Ben Kerr. And we'll welcome y'all here, and glad to see y'all, glad to have you on board. We're going to stand for the pledge of allegiance, and after we're going to have Mr. Farrell Benson lead us in a word of prayer.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Lord, thank you for another day. Thank you for a board meeting tonight. Thank you for new members, Lord. 4 new members. We're really excited about that. And Father, I just pray we have some important things going on tonight. We're going to elect our officers for the next term and other important decisions. So I pray that we'll make those decisions in accordance with your will. And I just want to thank you for a minute, Lord, for our district, for all the folks who work so hard, from our superintendent and his staff to the teachers, administrators, supervisors, bus drivers, maintenance folks, cafeteria ladies, and everybody, Lord, who has a valued part in educating our children. Thank you so much, Lord, for that great group that we have. And Father, just one other thing. Been a lot of commotion going on in our community the last week or so, and it's been worrisome. It's been scary for some. And Lord, I just want to pray for our country. Pray for safety. Pray for people to be calm out there. And Lord, just give us a great meeting tonight. We ask it all in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Benson. At this time, we have our election of officers. First, I'll turn it over to Dr. Bird.
Yes, sir. Tonight, we do need to elect our board chairman, so at this time, the floor is open for nominations.
Nominate Marty Burleson.
So we have a nomination of Marty Burleson. Are there any other nominations? I think we had a first by Mr. Alvis, and I don't know who seconded it. All right, by Ms. McClurkin. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passed. Congratulations, Mr.
Thank you.
Chair.
I appreciate each one of you having confidence in me, and I'm a phone call away if you ever need me for anything, any questions or whatnot, and just call me, email me, or whatever. And I appreciate y'all giving me another opportunity to lead. Thank you all. Next, we'll have I have to elect our vice chairman. Do we have a nomination for vice chairman?
I nominate Alvis.
We have Mr. Alvis for vice chairman. Any other nominations? Those in favor, if there's no other nominations, do we have those in favor, let it be known by saying aye, that Mr. Farrell be elected vice chairman. Aye. Opposed, no. The motion is passed. Mr. Farrell, you're the vice chairman.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. You've done well in the past. And thank you for you too. TLN representative, Mr. Vincent, you have been doing that, correct?
I have.
Okay. They keep up with the government from
Everything
TSB,
going on in the
everything going from
legislature.
TSBA, that's what it is. Everybody, all the emails and whatnot, and he keeps up with that. But do we have a nomination for the TLN representative?
I nominate Mr. Benson, he'll do it, yes.
Mr. Vincent's been nominated. Are there any other nominations? All those in favor of electing Mr. Vincent as a TLN representative, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passed. Mr. Vincent, you will be our TLN representative again. Thank you for doing that. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Farrell, second by Mr. Kirk. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passed. We do have one addition to the agenda. I'd like to add Ms. Deborah on for a short review of the board members' ethical requirements, and she's gonna speak with us for just a few minutes. Ms. Deborah Owen, she's our board attorney for you all haven't met her. You have to go.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. For those of you that I've met before, welcome. And for those of you who are new, welcome. You've got a big task. So let me begin by apologizing on behalf of Steve Shields. Steve is the other attorney who works primarily with Tipton County Schools. And he intended to be here tonight, but he could not because of some conflicts that came up during the day today. Primarily a mediation that would not end. And anyway, he does intend to come up and try to meet with you all soon, but he was not able to be here tonight, and he sends his regrets about that. I was asked to talk for just a couple of minutes about the ethics for board members, and it's a good reminder for those of you who have been here, and maybe an introduction to those of you who have not been here before. But I want to start by reading a sentence out of Tipton County Board of Education Policy 1.101. The board will oversee the operation of the school district in compliance with state and federal laws. One sentence with an awesome amount of responsibility packed in its words. Because you do have a school district with a lot of different kinds of personnel. It is the second most heavily regulated industry in the country. Healthcare is probably more regulated, but school districts come in right behind it. Laws and regulations at the federal and state level. So you have an awesome responsibility to understand what those laws are, and what those regulations are that impact what the decisions that you make as a school board. So I'm going to begin with, and I'm basically reviewing a few things out of your board policy. There's more in law, but I don't have enough time tonight to go over all of that. So I'm going to focus on a few things in your board policies. In 1.202, duties of board members, two of the duties, I'm not reading all of them, but two of the duties, to adhere to the boardmanship code of conduct and to adhere to the Tipton County District's Board of Education Code of Ethics. Those are two of your duties as board members. A few years ago, probably 20, the legislature added in state law a requirement that political bodies have a code of ethics, and including school districts. And I'm going to read a sentence out of the legislative intent because I think this sort of sums up the reason for all the stuff I'm going to talk about tonight. The General Assembly recognizes that holding public office, as you do, and public employment, as your staff in this district do, is a public trust, and that citizens of Tennessee are entitled to an ethical, accountable, and incorruptible government. That's what the legislature said when they decided that every political entity, including a school board like yourself, has to have a code of ethics. So Tipton County Board adopted Board Policy 1.106. It's basically developed by the TSBA, and most districts have a very similar. There's some very important words in this policy, okay? When it talks about who is bound by this policy, it's any official, whether elected, appointed, officer, employee, servant, or any member of any board, commission, or whatever that is a part of the school district. It applies not just to you as board members, but to other people in your district as well, like your superintendent. It governs personal interest. Personal interest. What is a personal interest? It is a financial interest of you or a spouse or a child living in your same household. It applies to all of these people, not just you as an individual. If you have a financial interest or your spouse has a financial interest in a matter to be voted upon, regulated, supervised, or otherwise acted upon in your official capacity. So, you must disclose if you have any of those types of interests. If it's a voting matter, okay? Your spouse, let's not use your spouse, your child is a teacher in the system, or your brother is a teacher in the system, and you're about to vote on a teacher raise. You think you need to disclose that? Yes, you need to disclose that. You have a financial interest in the salary of your son or your brother or whomever. If it is a non-voting matter, then you have to declare that kind of interest on a form. And that may be what you all were signing tonight, is it?
No.
I saw some of you signing some documents. There is a form that you need to sign. It is a disclosure of any types of interest that you might have that would not necessarily be a voting matter, and you need to disclose that in the meeting when you vote every time. But as a general matter, you have this form that you sign that says that you're not going to have a personal interest, or that when you do have a personal interest, you're going to exercise good discretion on behalf of the district and not on behalf of your personal interest. This policy also says that you cannot accept gifts. You cannot accept gifts. There's an exception if you go to a TSBA meeting and they've got, little tokens, or they've got a meal or something, you can accept that. But basically, you are not to accept gifts. And you are enabled by this policy, I don't know if you all have done this, but you are enabled by this policy to create an ethics committee to hear any complaints against you or against other people to whom this policy applies. Very closely related to this policy is Board Policy 1.107, and this is based on statute, okay? It's called the Board Member Conflict of Interest, but these two policies go hand in hand, because it says that you may not have a direct interest in a contract that you are going to vote for, or you're going to superintend, or anything like that. So if you own an HVAC company, don't bid on any district business involving HVACs, okay? That is you cannot be directly interested in a contract that you're going to vote for as a board member. And you cannot be indirectly interested in a contract. And what does that mean? That means, and I hate this, but this is right out of the statute. It means that you're not directly interested. That's basically what the statute says. You're directly interested if you are voting on a contract, or if you have any interest in a contract for the district, but if you are indirectly interested, there's one exception, and that is if you are directly interested, you own the HVAC company, but it is the only HVAC company in Tipton County. That's probably not going to happen, but it's possible. You can vote on budgets. There's an exception. You can look at the policy, and I will urge you, if you've not already, as a new board member, if you've not already started reading board policies, particularly Section 1 about the board, then I think that you should, spend a little time in those policies. The penalty, I'm going to read this. The penalty for a conflict of interest, a violation, is very serious. You will forfeit all of your pay and compensation. You will be dismissed from the board, and you will be ineligible to serve in the same or a similar position for 10 years. 10 years. Now, all this is, this sounds like, oh yeah, this is just logical, right? This is logical. You'd be surprised how many times we get calls in our office about, well, can we do this? Can we do this? Is this ethical? I also want to mention policy 1.108, and it involves if you have a relative who is employed by the system, the director is supposed to make you aware of that, and then you must certify every time you vote on a matter that might affect your relative. Every single time in a board meeting, you have to declare that. And the instructions on how to do that are in your board policy. And then also, you have a boardsmanship code of conduct. This is not statutory. This is based, and it says this right here in your policy, this is based on recommendations from the Tennessee School Board Association. And it talks about your relationships with children, your responsibilities to children, your responsibilities to the community, your responsibilities to the staff of the district, your responsibilities with other board members. responsibilities or relationships with the director of schools, and your responsibilities to yourself. And I'm going to read one of the responsibilities you have to yourself. I will avoid conflicts of interest, and I will refrain from using my position on the board for personal or partisan gain. Let me tell you why this second policy is so important, and I'm going to close with this. I said it's not statutory. All this other stuff I've talked about tonight is statutory. This is based on TSBA's recommendations. Our firm was engaged several months ago, about a year now. Our firm was engaged to do an investigation of some serious ethical allegations against a school board member. It was in another part of the state, not around West Tennessee. I was the primary investigator. The allegations against this board member were serious. I'm not going to go into that. But I'm going to tell you that we did a very thorough investigation. At the end of the investigation, we said, this board member did not commit an ethical violation. We said that. Because the code of ethics is focused on financial. But we did find a very serious violation of this code of conduct. And it had to do with relationship with teachers, supporting and protecting personnel in the performance of their duties. And we found that that board member had violated the boardsmanship code of conduct, which is, in a way, is an ethical standard that you have to abide by, as well as the statutory ethics. So again, you have an awesome responsibility. You have a wonderful school district. You have a lot of success in your school district. You have a lot of fantastic employees and fantastic board members. But you have an awesome responsibility to the children of this district. And part of that responsibility is to understand all the laws and all the regulations, and there are gazillions of them, okay, that you have to abide by when you're doing your job. But having said all that, I welcome you to your jobs, especially those of you who are new, those of you who are returning, thank you again. And I wish you the absolute best in what you do. And certainly if Steve and I can be of any assistance to you, we are certainly willing to do that. We usually work through your chair and your director, so I assume that's the protocol we will continue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Deborah Owens. Thank you for being here. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Do we have a motion? Do we have any item that anyone would like to remove for discussion? We got a field trip that we need to add in that was a little late getting in the packet. Well, it wasn't in our packet, but anyway, it's been okayed by everyone. The powers to be, and it's fine to put it with you if no one objects. If no one objects, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Mr. Jenkins, second by Mr. Eubanks. Those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passed. Next, we're gonna move Mr. Hunter Bennett up a spot. He's got a place he needs to go, and we're gonna let him go ahead and do his presentation.
Well, I do appreciate it. I've got my daughter has requested that I attend her first kids pitch softball practice, so I thought I should go since she seems to be a little fragile. She doesn't mind playing with cows in the pasture, but softball coming at her, she's not nervous. So I'll keep it short. Since school has started, guys, our capital improvement projects have kind of simmered down. We wrapped up, like I said in our last one, our bathroom projects was very successful. But moving forward, our football LED, our lights at our football stadiums we have completed those. We'll tell you that was a task to say the least, but we were successful in getting those completed. We do have a meeting scheduled for first of the week of next week to confirm our spring sports schedule, so we don't have lights being activated the day of the game. So we're looking forward to getting those in ahead of time. At Brighton High School, we have awarded West Tennessee fence. We'll be doing the the fence that you guys are aware of that's gonna be protecting the track. And along with that, we do plan to purchase some mats that will protect the track as well for where the football teams cross over to protect that asset, as well as where the cheerleaders, where they'll be performing. The greenhouse at Brighton High School, that's the ag project for the ag, remember you had the money that was, had to roll over to this fiscal year. So that greenhouse is currently out for bid, so hopefully, I think that bid opening is next week. So at the next meeting, we'll let you know who will be constructing that one. The football bridge, that was, and I will give a shout out to Covington High School's welding class. They took that project on to get that expedited for us. It's currently, we haven't been able to get it installed, but it is constructed. It still has to have some final, just got to be painted and the handrails welded on. But we're hopeful that next week's weather will allow us to be able to get that installed, and they'll be able to carry on with their new tradition of entering the field at a new place and not having to part as everyone comes to the main gate. So that project it's been a fun one. The kids loved it. It took, they took that project on gladly, and it was exciting to see them be able to come together as a district, and really do something even for a rival. So, and speaking of CHS, also their Ag Barn project has been bid, and it will be awarded to Summertown Metal. So those projects are both, we're looking forward to get those started as soon as the farmer gets the crops out this year. And then we met with Service Master today to begin discussing our schedule for the upcoming bathroom projects that we will next. We'll be at Brighton Elementary, Crestview Elementary, and Charger Academy. Those are the two that we're going to focus. And then they're also going to try to go ahead and staff up to see if we can't maybe take care of a couple others during this next round. So the way that with the success of this past summer, they feel comfortable that we can possibly go ahead and knock out another school or possibly two more with this next summer. Diving into the new position over the maintenance supervisor, a lot of maintenance that we will be doing. So I will be reporting more on those as they come to light, getting the schools open and teachers in, and not finding things that we will try to get taken care of during the summertime, but it's been a pretty full schedule, and luckily we've been able to take a break from the capital projects to focus on some maintenance and some things that they feel on a daily basis. So, does anyone have any questions for me? Sorry I don't have a pretty PowerPoint this evening. We'll have one soon.
No questions? All right, Mr. Bennett, we appreciate the report.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Appreciate you letting me skip out this evening for the rest.
That's fine. Good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Dr. Byrd, Director of Instruction, report.
I want to start tonight with our American Fidelity Teacher of the Month. This month, for the month of August, we have Miss Candy Howard. She was nominated by her principal, Miss Lisa Rose, who's here tonight. And this is what Miss Rose had to say about Miss Candy. She said, Miss Candy is a leader at Atoka Elementary. She serves on multiple committees and is a mentor to a number of teachers by sharing her curriculum plans and helping new teachers develop their practice. Students love her because she is kind, loving, fun, and truly cares about each of them. So, Miss Candy Howard, if you would come up, I would like to present tonight your plaque and award. Congratulations. Very well deserved. Very much.
Have y'all got a picture?
They're gonna take one out
Okay,
front, so I
okay,
told her she
okay.
didn't have to stay.
Okay, that's
Yes,
good.
I'll take one.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
We're excited that American Fidelity is sponsoring that for us again this year, and we'll have one of those each month through the month of May. Another important announcement today, full of happy news tonight. Our very own Mr. James Fields, who serves as Director of Operations, has been named as one of 9 finalists for Tennessee Supervisor of the Year. So congratulations to Mr. Fields, and we certainly wish him well in the next phase of the selection process. And that was just announced today, so it's hot off the presses, one of the finalists for Tennessee Supervisor of the Year. Very well deserved, Coach Fields.
Huge honor.
Yeah, that's what we're raised tonight.
It's
I
nine.
know.
It's 9 in the state, so he's doing pretty well.
Yeah, there are only 9 in the state.
He's the man with many hats, that's what I always say.
Yes, don't build him up too much. I'm kidding. All right, another important announcement. We're proud to report to you this year that we have 9 former teacher assistants who have moved into teaching positions this year, and we want to commend those employees for their hard work, and we look forward to working with them in a new capacity. So it's very exciting for us that those paraprofessionals have moved into teaching positions.
Rebecca, were any of those part of the programs that came out about,
The Grow Your Own?
Yeah.
I don't, is Lisa Bennett here? She's not here. I don't know that they were part of the Grow Your Own, but I can find out and let you
and
know.
then there was something from UT Martin too, wasn't it? Wasn't UT Martin sponsoring did
I
that?
think they called it the Grow Your Own, but
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know where these folks went to school. Do you know?
I don't think any of ours were in.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Still,
I'll ask Ms.
that's a
Bennett.
cool number though, that's good.
All right, last month I shared with you our plans for textbook adoption. I've shared that with principals at the principals meeting. Everything has been approved, but tonight I have in your packet a list of the teachers, administrators, supervisors, it looks like this, and parents who will comprise our district level textbook adoption committee upon your approval. Mr. Chairman, I will need a motion to approve the committee names.
Do we have a motion to approve the textbook adoption committee as presented? It's in our package. A motion by Mr. Davidson, second by Mr. Farrell. Are there any questions about it? Those in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion passed.
Our first meeting with this committee will be September 22nd at 3:15 here in the boardroom. And so if any of our board members would like to come and observe, you are certainly welcome to do that.
What was the name?
September 22nd.
September 22nd, 3:15. That's an in-service night for teachers, and we're gonna pull that committee up here. And we'll be here in the boardroom. In your packets tonight, you will see a report for each high school with the total number, it looks like this, with the total number of early post-secondary opportunities, we call those EPSOs, in which our students are involved. And our goal each year is to increase these offerings to provide our students with optimal opportunities for success after high school. This is a report that I give you every year at about this time, so I just wanted to provide that with you, or for you again tonight. Tonight, I also have a new position that I would like for you to take under consideration. We would like to hire a 25-hour inventory specialist using ESSER 3 funds. The position would be for 2 years. It's we would like for it to be a 25-hour position, so it would be part-time at a pay rate of $15 an hour. The person's job responsibility would be to assist with equipment inventory, as well as not just for general, but for CTE as well, ordering, unpacking inventory, keeping up with all the inventory for the next 2 years. And Mr. Chair, I would also need a motion to approve that position.
Do we have a motion to approve this request as presented? Motion by Ms. McClurkin, second by Mr. McCann. Are there any questions about it? Those in favor, aye. Those opposed, motion passed.
And the last item I have, sorry, my report's a little lengthy tonight. I'm doing some of Dr. Combs' reporting. The last item is the third grade retention law that will go into effect for this school year. Tennessee Code Annotated 49-6-3115 requires that third grade students who score in the below expectations or approaching expectations categories on the state English language arts test be retained in third grade, starting with this school year. We feel that decisions regarding students' promotion or retention should be made based on multiple factors and not just on one test score. And we think that consideration should be, taken into multiple factors, but also the professional expertise of our teachers, as well as input from parents. We have prepared a resolution that has been shared with you. It's also in your packet again for your consideration. And if it's the will of the board, by adopting this resolution, our board will be asking the General Assembly to amend the current law and allow retention decisions to be made based on more than a student's third grade TCAP score and at the discretion of LEAs. So again, Mr. Chair, I would need a motion to adopt the resolution if it is the will of the
I wouldn't mind talking about that a little bit.
Sure.
Because I did read the law, and it sounds pretty reasonable, you know? It's like, it's not just, I mean, I guess it gives it a path for if they're not, either on track or master, those are the two that it's okay. It's the ones that they are approaching or below.
Correct.
So, and that law's in effect now, right, for this school year? So are we doing like any assessment to find out how many of those students may be in jeopardy of falling in that category, or?
Yes, so during the school, well, we can look at last year's TCAP scores to give us like an estimate. And to give you a frame of reference, last year, third grade, on track and master, 32.7%.
32 were on track or master?
Yes, 32.7%. Across the state, it's about 30%.
Yep.
So about 70% across the state of Tennessee, third graders, based on this law, be retained.
I
Now,
get-
there are some ways, as you see in the law, that if they go to summer school,
Yeah.
and they show, growth, and there are some things that we're still trying to get clarification on from TDOE. But yes, there are some ways that you wouldn't be retained, but
Right.
there are gonna be some students retained as a result of.
So then I start thinking, well, what's the purpose, you know, obviously, we don't want to promote kids that aren't proficient, correct? I mean, it's like, you know, I was trying to learn about it a little bit, you know, why did they choose third grade? But it's like, there is data that shows that from the third grade level, if you're not proficient, your chances of graduating are 4 times as, not graduating on time is like 4 times as likely. And it's like, you know, I didn't, reading through the law, I didn't see a problem with it, because it does give that path. And I feel like, you know, obviously, superintendent wants to have the last say, so I understand that control side of it, but it's like, I just don't have a problem with the law saying that they gotta be proficient. So it's, you know, I guess I need to learn more about it, but
Yeah, I think our position is, we would like for the General Assembly to consider the fact that this is based on one test, one day, rather than multiple measures.
so that gets me
such as-
to, what is considered third grade proficient, you know, because it's hard to even find out what is, you know, how do we can,
Probably depends on who you ask.
Right.
Just like anything else. But we want to look at multiple things. We give a universal reading screener, and Brooke Shipley is here tonight. And so Brooke, do you feel free to add anything
I
else?
do
but-
want to say that, I think Dr. Bird went over this last month, and our new people were not here. We do have an example. A grade equivalency, we have to give, you know, students a score. So that grade equivalency, we had a student that, we know very well. We just came across this student, and then we started doing some research. We had a student that made an 85, an equivalent of an 85, and that equivalent of an 85 is approaching. So that student that made an 85 on the ELA test would be one that would be considered to be retained.
Yeah.
So,
well, I know, it just sounds, you know, when you read through it,
it does.
you know, if, you know, why would we want to promote if you're not proficient? So if the standards are too high, I'm not saying you lower the standard, but I feel like it gives you a path to go, to pull those students out that aren't, and then say, all right, these are the ones we need to be focused on with extra tutoring and the summer school course. And it's, you know, all I'm saying, it sounds like a reasonable law. It sounds very reasonable.
I understand your point. I think we would just like for the legislature to consider multiple measures, such as our universal screener that we give 3 times a year, our benchmark test that we give 3 times a year. There are other things, they're day-to-day classwork assignments. I mean, they could come in on TCAP day, and this is a drastic example,
Right.
obviously, but they could be sick that day and not do very
Sure.
well. I know my own child last year came home the very first day of ELA, and of course, your question as a parent is, how'd you do today? Because you want them to do well without stressing them out. You do want them to do well.
Yep.
And she said, I didn't finish. She's a straight A student. And I just said, well, you'll do better tomorrow, because I
Yep.
didn't want to upset her
Sure.
about it. But she said, I didn't finish. I ran out of time. So there are other
I think as a school system, as educators, those are things that give us pause about this law, because it is just one test, one day. And the same thing happened, not that science is in question here, she didn't finish the science either, so,
Some
yeah.
kids aren't good test takers.
Some aren't, and they're sick, or something has happened at home that morning, or the night before, you know.
But then that's where I said the law does give them a chance to retest, it does give, you know, it's the summer school. And I guess my concern is, you know, with the learning loss from the last couple of years, I don't know if, from what I was told, this law was kind of put in motion before the whole COVID stuff, so it's not directly related to that, but, you know, I guess you gotta set high standards, and then, hey, we gotta look, you know, work to achieve that, and that's why I feel if you're testing throughout the year, or seeing where these kids' levels are, you know, some of those just need extra.
Yeah, and each principal, came up, I don't know, maybe about the third week of school with an instructional plan for their school on how they were going to address deficits and, you know, if ELA was something their school needed to improve upon, how they were going to do that. So there are steps being put in place, and Ms. Shipley's actually right now meeting with each individual elementary principal to address third grade specifically,
Right.
and how we're going to intervene for these students throughout
Right.
the year so that they aren't on that retention list.
Because I'm sure there's other districts across the state that are probably in worse shape, you know.
It's very much a concern
Sure.
from supervisors that I talk to weekly, you know, during different meetings. This is a concern across,
Yeah.
it's not just in Tipton County,
Yeah.
this is a statewide concern among educators and parents too, once they realize what this law actually says.
So Dr. Berg, just so I can have clarification, on the
Sure.
test, if they don't do well on that test, did I write down that 70% of Tennessee's third graders are retained?
Approximately. If they don't meet one of those requirements that's outlined in the law, summer school, showing adequate growth in summer school, I can't
Right.
quote all of the things, but
Yeah.
I think you have a copy
That's
of
just
the law
a
in front of you.
huge percentage.
It is a huge percentage. And again, you know, I don't wanna keep saying the same thing for one test, one day.
Right.
That's our position.
But it is currently law, and that's what
It
we're,
is
that's what
currently
we're up
law.
against right now. Yeah.
Yes. And we are working to address that and put interventions in place so that we don't end the year with
Right,
70% of
yeah,
our
right,
third graders needing to be retained. We obviously will have summer school or some type of summer program for third grade. We will have to.
My opinion, what it looks like it's just like a lot of stuff that gets pushed down from the state. It's mandated and pushed down to us and we have to make it work. And I think having different avenues of grading our children on our own district is a good idea. Anything we can do locally and it's not mandated by the state.
Yeah, and we, you know, Mr. Farrell, we don't know if the law is going to change. I mean, I'm assuming it will depend on the pushback they get from the public and the constituents in
But
the
how
district.
many years can these kids be retained?
Sir?
How many years can they be retained in the third grade?
Just one.
Just once.
And this is a resolution, and I don't know how many resolutions they ever receive, but
Yeah.
these resolutions sometimes go out the window.
I guess the question, what is our
You
percentage,
know.
what percentage of third graders did we retain last year? I mean, it's not a big number, right?
I would say it's not a big number.
Yeah.
And you can find, you know, Mr. McCain, you can find data on both, just like you can in any situation to support whether or not retention even works.
Right.
You can track students who have been retained to see, you know, do they in fact do better? Sometimes in my experience as an educator, I will often see, and I've got principals and teachers sitting behind me who may think otherwise, but you'll often see that the year that they are retained first, like if they repeat third grade, they often do better, but then sometimes once they move on to fourth or fifth, you don't see what you hope to see.
Sure.
So, you know, there's research to support whether or not retention works, and there's strong opinions and data on both sides of that issue.
Parents get an opportunity to retain their child if they want to repeat that grade?
Under this law, or just in general?
In general.
It usually comes down, in my experience, when I was principal, I would meet with the parent, we would have discussion about it and try to come to what we felt like was the best decision for that student. So it wasn't just, when I was principal, I didn't just say, this is what's gonna happen. We would have to make the best decision that we felt like that student needed to be successful. It's kind of hard to answer that, case by case.
Get my 2 cents in just
Sure.
from coming off of a pandemic,
first and second graders, some of them couldn't even see their teachers mouthing words because they were wearing masks. And now they're gonna do this, it's stupid. Our legislators are nuts. And when the public realizes that, trust me, I bet anybody $100 are gonna change that law. I can almost guarantee that.
Are there any other school districts combining the send-in resolution for that?
Yes, sir, I believe, I can't quote you which ones have, I know that some have because I've seen it on social media, but I don't know off the top of my head, someone else may, but I do not know that. But I know other districts have sent resolutions, but like Mr. Marty said, you know, will it do any good? We don't know, but this just lets them know how our board feels if you all choose to adopt the resolution.
We can make some phone calls.
Well, I'm saying you get 70% that are gonna be retained, that would be huge problems everywhere.
All right, do we have a motion to approve this resolution?
I move we adopt the resolution.
Motion by Mr. Davis and a second by Mr. Kirk. Are there any other questions? We still ask questions, but I want to get that on the floor. If there are no other questions, all those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. I'm gonna pass it around where we can all sign it.
Mr. Chair, that concludes my report. I just want to say one other thing. Phil Ramsey is here tonight to take pictures. I sent you guys an email. He would like to take a group picture as soon as the meeting's over in front of that sign.
Okay.
And then we'll go to my side of the building and take some individual pictures over there. But that's all I have unless somebody has questions.
Do we have all our teachers now?
We are a few short. Ms. Melinda, do you know the number?
Maybe 5. That's all we like.
That's it, close.
We're heading there.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Bird.
You're welcome.
Mr. James Fields, Director of Operations report. Congratulations again on your honor for being selected as Supervisor of the Year. Fabulous.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. I also like to welcome our new board members, looking forward to working with you. Dr. Bird, she's always telling me something, if something happens in the district, she'll say, James, this is not in your lane, or this is not in my lane. So I'm glad the instructions are not in my lane. Hey, in your bag, in your packet, you'll see a clear bag procedure, and also you'll see a endorsement from the Tipton County Sheriff's Department. So we started enforcing this actually for the first home game. There was an incident in one of the preseason games where a couple kids were supposedly may have had a weapon in their backpack at the game. So the next day, Dr. Combs immediately put this in effect before our first home game, big home game. Haven't had any pushback, minor issues, just people not accustomed. You know how people don't want change. Really no big deal. I'm also happy to announce that we have a SRO in every building in the district, and I think that's major. You know, of course, that gives parents peace of mind. So I commend Mr. Turner and Dr. Combs for getting that done. Our last report, we had 57 out-of-district students. We now have 59. If you can remember, well, obviously some of you weren't here the last report. Our first year we had 17. The next year we had 48. This year I'm looking to have around 70. Or we're looking to have around 70. So it says a lot for our district. Unfortunately, we've denied 4. So when we look at the apps, of course, if their attendance from their previous school or discipline or grades were not up to par, we have that right to deny them. We basically look at behavior. You know, any child, especially at this point in time, they can be behind. But if they have a string of behavior problems, most of the time we choose not to take them. Also, on the last report, we had 10,172 students. Today, we have 10,245. That's even 7 more than what we ended with last year. Our after-school program, we continue to seek SAC workers. But the good news is, in my last report, we had 109 kids on the waiting list to get into the after-school program. Today, we only have 54 on the waiting list, so we're making progress. The supervisor also informed me that the state visits went very well last week, so we're complying with everything. In transportation, we're still several drivers short. They have recommended 5 new drivers for full-time. And remember, we have an approved state tester, so we can test our own drivers. Tested and passed 2 drivers on August the 31st. And there's two people going through training this month. And we also still have 2 positions for mechanics. In food service, after-school meals started this week. So now kids can eat 3 meals a day. And again, that's major for our district. It's great. Some of the challenges, food shortages and vendors making last-minute replacements. So a lot of times, we don't even know what's on the truck when it gets here, and most of the time, it's not what we ordered. So Ms. Sabrina, she's working, it's really nothing she can do, but we're dealing with it. Another challenge is price increases, delays on supplies and equipment, and COVID waivers have ended. So what that means is the parents are used to not paying. Even the parents that are on free and reduced, and they're beginning to charge, and that deal is going, right now, I think we're around $4,000 where kids have charged and they won't pay. So that's probably gonna continue to be a problem. The last thing I have is our Project Succeed, that's the after-school program. That's that's funded by 2 grants totaling $645,988. 10 schools are eligible. So we have 10 schools that's using this program. And after school, that includes tutoring, math and reading, language arts, another meal, transportation is provided, ACT prep, STEM classes, and those kids are chosen by the administration. But any kid in those 10 schools can be in the program. But admin and the site directors, they usually choose who's involved. Mr. Glenn, did you need a minute?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, can I land, Mr. Glenn? Any questions for me?
Thank you, Mr. Mills.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
The new board members, I want to thank y'all for your service. I tell you, I've run a few elections and served, and as no one said, it's an awesome responsibility, but it takes quality people. I appreciate y'all stepping up and doing that. I want to come to you and ask tonight, we have a student at Covington High School named Lamar Sanders. He is trying to get, if I use the wrong terminology, don't get mad, his Eagle Scout badge for Boy Scouts. He came to me several months ago, and he was wanting to build a ADA handicap accessible playground area. Well, he had some grand ideas, but I think he found out that fundraising is tough. But he does have some money, and he scaled back. He wants to put in a sensory, I hope I say it's right, a sensory walkway that meets ADA standard. And we do have some playgrounds that would be available to put that on. We have plenty of area. I've got about 2 or 3 have a lot of area. But in the meantime, he also took him down. I had to get all of them in Munford, so I took him down to Munford, and we have voted to allow him some space at Valentine Park to put his ADA playground in. And it's taken a while. I think, Griff, the park manager down there, he's working on a grant of repurposing of some equipment, buy some new equipment, and put it down. So it looks like the Valentine Park area is not going to be available for him. But today, we talked in a committee meeting about letting him move out to one of our other parks. So it appears that he will have another park in Munford to put this. But what I want to ask y'all, if this does not work out with that park in Munford, I would like y'all to give permission for him to build that on one of our playgrounds in an area that, you know, can handle it, and obviously it would have to meet all the standards of ADA, and the specifications and whatnot, and just, I guess as a backup, because he's running out of time, he's got till, at the end of November to get this done. So I would ask y'all to say, if you can't build it at Mumford, and if, with Dr. Combs and my guidance, we can put it in one of our parks, I guess is what I'm asking.
Okay. Y'all heard the request. Do we have a motion to grant this request? Motion by Mr. Farrell, second by Mr. Jenkins. Are there any questions?
I would like to see Mr. Bennett involved in this also.
Oh,
Quite a bit.
but have Hunter kind of overlook it.
Oh, that's, yeah, no doubt. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll make sure there's ADA and several, but I'm not a builder or anybody.
Okay, all right. So,
I'm not technology either.
all right. We've heard the request. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passed. So,
I do want to, you know, Mr. Peel said that we have a SO for every building we do. But in Brighton, right now, they have hired the last SRO for Brighton, but she is training with the two other SROs, so they're sort of moving around in Brighton. So this, I just wanted to be complete disclosure there, but she is training. Once she gets trained and certified, she'll be put in the building by herself.
That's great. But we're glad to see those SROs.
I tell you,
Yes.
I've been, now, about 6 years,
Yes.
I've been singing the noise, and finally,
That's
we got
right.
it done, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
all are. Thank you, Mr. Turner.
On that note, Austin P. Elementary's in my district out there, and they're one of those that's out there by themselves, and that's been on my mind quite a bit too. It's a
And
It's a
Drummond,
blessing.
and Drummond, they were way out.
Are they, by the sheriff's department, is that who hired them full-time out of Drummond's and Austin P?
Yes, there were two sheriff's deputies, and Jason Allen is,
At Drummond's?
at Drummond's, and he has been an SO officer before, plus he had been filling in on his days off as a SO, security or SO at Drummond's, so he's very well versed, he's awesome. And Heather Andrews is out at Austin P, and she's been doing the same thing. They work four-day shifts, so a lot of times on their off days, they'll work at the schools. And Heather has worked at both schools, but she's very well versed and almost, quite SRO ready now. So,
So now they're full-time?
yes, they are full-time at our schools, yes, ma'am.
Every school has one.
Yeah, I knew the others did, I
Yes.
just wasn't sure that they.
Got it, finally got them all in. Mr. Billy Darby, our favorite financial report.
Good evening. Welcome back to our members and welcome to our new members. This is the fun part when we get to go to sleep. We've got a lot of business to cover tonight, and so I would like to get started. First of all, we'll start with a financial report. You'll have a package, something in your packet looks like this. We'll basically cover the revenues and expenditures on the three funds. So primarily, I try not to be too redundant, but I don't want to leave out any information you might find helpful. There's four funds in the school's budget. There's the 141 general purpose school fund budget. There's the 142 federal projects budget, the 143 cafeteria budget, and the 177 capital funds budget. So if you'll turn to page 2, they're highlighted in yellow. At the top of the revenues, you can compare them to the previous year. And at the bottom, the expenditures for the 141 general purpose school. On the second page, the federal projects budget, same there. And then on the back page, central cafeteria. Wonder why that's a negative on revenue. We had our interest payments we had to pay from the end of the year to the start of this year, which has that at negative $77.71. But those are the August revenues and expenditures for the three funds. We have the 177 that's still open due to some supply chain issues. We were going to close that fund last year. When able to do so, the comptroller recommended we keep it open until we liquidate the two POs that stand against it. There's no money there except for what's encumbered. Small fund balance, about $600-something. We'll probably try to expend once the two projects are completed. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the financial report.
Do we have a motion to approve the financial report as presented? Motion by Mr. Farrell, second by Mr. Eubanks. Are there any questions about it? Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passed.
The next you'll see in your packet is the 141 General Purpose School Fund budget. Now, we bring these amendments to you all and we will carry them, you'll see at the top left-hand corner, they'll go before the Finance Committee at their October meeting and the full legislative body on October 10th at their meeting to be finalized. To go over a few in the General Purpose School Fund, I will say this, we're gonna make these tonight. All the carryover from the federal project grants are coming in this month, and that's why those of you that have been here remember this is a significant month for the carryover funds in the 142. A couple of grants that go on in the 141, however. So I just want to go over those with you. If you'll look on page 2 of 12, that first number 206311, that is the carryover from the voluntary pre-K grant. You'll see that later in the budget. That's VPK money. At the next 3 numbers you see, the negative 189, you'll see the next 2 numbers add up to that. In July, the Tennessee Comptroller updated the chart of accounts, adding 2 revenue codes for coordinated school health and family resource centers. They had historically been in the 46590, which is why in May we had budgeted those numbers there, but we're just essentially bringing them out to the codes set by the Comptroller. Going down to the 9350. So Title III money, which is typically in the consolidated school budget, is the ESL, the English as a second language. We didn't meet the student population to have our own grant. So Tipton County, as we have been in years past, are in a consortium with Lauderdale County and Haywood County, I believe. And so we charge, they pay us, it comes in through the general fund because we're in a consortium. Had it been back to the level it was last year, we had enough students to be in the federal budget. So. Then if you look at the 56796, that is a grant from SCORE that is going to be used for a new platform. You all approved a contract here a couple of meetings ago for the School Links platform that helps the career readiness. And so that is that donation from SCORE that paid for the first year and the district committed to the next 2 fiscal years. Now, the rest of the money in the expenditure line items is where you will see the money expended, basically bringing a 0 balance, no change to fund balance with those items we just spoke about. But if you'll flip over to page 11, on page 11 near the about 3/4 of the way down, you'll see a figure of $1,015,840. That is a request from fund balance. So let me tell you what that is. Last year, the school board and the county legislative body approved $350,000 for each ag bar. Mr. Bennett was speaking about that earlier, for each of the high schools. Because of supply chain issues, the money did not get encumbered on purchase orders with vendors. As you heard Mr. Bennett say, it's just now getting out to bid on some of them. The comptroller recommended that we put it back into fund balance because it was not obligated, and to bring it back out this year's because it was not under a purchase order obligation in the previous year. All the other capital projects that we had in our ask were, these were not. So we're asking to bring that money went back into fund balance at June 30th. We're asking to bring, now it was $1,050,000 when we started. So you'll see some money has been spent. I believe Mumford High, don't quote me on exact, Mumford High is about 17 grand. Brighton's at about 16 grand, and Covenant's at a whole $186 for the ad they run in the paper for the bid. So that's all they spent out of theirs. And so that's the money that's left to spend $350 for an ag bar at each of the 3 high schools. This is a move from fund balance into the budget, same thing you did last year. So I'm disclosing that we're bringing that out of fund balance at a request to bring it out of fund balance if you so choose. Mr. Chairman, that is our budget request and budget amendments for the 141 General Purpose School Fund budget.
We've heard the request as presented. Do we have a motion? Motion by Mr. McCann, second by Mr. Clerk. Are there any questions about it?
All right, the next budget, I'm sorry.
Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passed. Carry on.
I'm looking at that clock, Mr. Chairman, I'm just trying to get you out of here. All right, so for the 142 on the green paper is the federal school projects budget. Now this budget is not complicated, but it's comprehensive. It includes a number of other grants. Now I'm prepared to show you the information of how that is set up in the state system. I've got E-Plan pulled up and I'm ready to do that if you so desire. I don't want to overrun you with information, but if you have questions, feel free to ask me. I'll be glad to explain this to you. So these are federal dollars. There's no tax rate on this budget. Everything that's in this budget is not on property tax. It comes in from the feds and goes out on the projects that they tell us. So basically, we applied, there are entitlement grants and there are competitive grants that we apply for. Some of those are our consolidated funding, 21st century, like Mr. Fields was talking about, Project Succeed. There's about 17 budgets or 17 grants in here currently. And so that's what you'll see. So what has happened, all the money from the previous year that wasn't spent has rolled over. They call it carryover. So we had a budget that was approved, now we're bringing in carryover. In addition to that, there are some grants across the state where if districts don't use their money, the state puts it back into one big pool and they select certain schools to get the money, and then and we're part of that too, especially in our Perkins money. And so I'm bringing those amendments before you tonight. These are carryover. Now, when you look at those numbers, you cannot associate that with any one grant because it's made up by several different grants. Again, I'd be glad to show you on E-Plan if you would like. But basically, we're increasing the federal project school budget by $15.5 million in carryover money from about 17 different grants. And that you can see as they flow throughout their budget there. And I'll be glad to discuss them if you want to and can show you what the money is being used for. It's up to the board, Mr. Chairman, but otherwise, that is the 142 federal school projects budget amendments.
Would anyone like to see that, or?
Question.
Okay,
Sure.
go ahead.
On grant funding,
Yes,
on the
ma'am.
monies, how many years do they allow you to roll that over if it's unused?
So great question. It depends on the grant. Some are one and dones and some carry over, like the 21st Century Project Succeed. We're spending 2018 money right now. And so it just depends on the grant. But we can show you an E-Plan. It lists award date and it lists the must be expended by date. You all, I'm sure, will be exposed to E-Plan. It's the platform that the State Department of Education uses to control all of the funding and programs and instruction, and there's a lot of resources out there. The public can sign on to E-Plan to get a lot of information. I encourage you to do that in your free time so you can become familiar with it.
Do we have a motion to approve the amendments on the federal amendments projects? Motion by Mr. Jenkins, second by?
Second.
Ms. McClure. Are there any questions about it? Those in favor, aye? Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passed.
All right, the next item we're going to take up are some bids we're going to request, if you don't mind. So one of the bids for your consideration tonight, our postal metering machine, what we put on mail to mail out, is up for renewal. The last time this board reviewed this contract, it was a 5-year contract that expires in a couple of months. We bid the contract back up for renewal from Memphis Communications, who is the carrier in this area that covers that. There's 3 options to choose from. There's a 36, a 48, and a 60-month lease. And so the 36-month lease, which is what I'm going to recommend to the board tonight, is $7,782.84. The 48-month term lease is $7,157.52. And the 60-month lease is $10,833. Now, you would be obligating funding for the next however many, whatever you choose, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years in the budget to do this lease. But obviously, we have to do the mail. But this does not rise to the level of the new GASB 87 requirement that requires us to book them as assets because it doesn't meet that threshold. So this board can approve that without any further. My recommendation, Mr. Chairman, is the 3-year lease to Memphis Communications Company for the postage meter lease.
Okay, do we have a motion? Motion by Ms. Eubanks, second by Mr. Jenkins. Are there any questions about it? Those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passed.
All right. Next item of business. There are a number of copier contracts, to be exact. There's 13 out of the 18 from across the district that I was going to bring to you tonight from individual internal schools and also from the district. However, the comptroller, the auditor, and the attorney and I have been working on them, and Ms. Deborah asked me tonight to hold up. So moving right along, I will be bringing that back to you, but there's some concerns she has that she doesn't want to move forward with the contracts yet. And last but not least, I have got one other thing. So, in order to improve our internal controls, we're going to ask the board tonight to consolidate the banking for the school-age child care, SACC. So right now they do business at, I believe it's 7 different banks. And so It's difficult for internal control for us to see it from a management standpoint, and for Ms. Tandra, who's the manager, to see all the different, and plus you've got workers running all over the county to banks. Our recommendation tonight, our request is for the board, it has been in the minutes for us to open this account, is for the board to allow the school district to open up an account at In-South Bank, who has a North and South Branch location. We already do business with Patriot on other accounts. But to take all 7 of the accounts for SACC and put them at In-South Bank. And in so asking, we're gonna ask that Dr. Combs, me, Coach Fields, and Ms. Tandra Young, who is the SACC director, be signatures on the accounts so that we have access. That's our request, Mr. Chairman, to move 7 accounts. We would do this effective January the 1st for the calendar year. And so we would move money in the meantime to set the accounts up to be ready for that.
Do we have a motion for this request? A motion by Mr. Davidson, second by Mr. McCann. Are there any questions?
Are those signatures
Okay, go ahead.
2 signatures per check, or is it all 3?
It's 2 signatures per check. Yes.
This is every school changing their banking system.
This is school-age childcare only, so this affects the 7 elementary schools. We are in the process of working with some other schools to change, but internal school banking, we eventually will come to the board for every school to be at the same bank. But right now, we're just working with the ones that are having issues at the banks that they're currently trying to move those accounts. But we'll be back in the next month or 2 to ask for those. Those are internal school budgets. This is the school-age childcare. There's also, I talked to Ms. Sabrina today, we'll be asking the same thing for food service eventually too, because they're spread out all over the place as well, and she's having some difficulty with that, as far as her being able to monitor.
Makes sense.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passed.
Next to last item on the agenda, we are requesting an additional position. Dr. Combs asked that I bring this to the board's attention. He and Mayor Huffman have been working together to bring in to share a grant writer coordinator for capital projects. And so we're asking tonight to bring that in the budget. The commitment on behalf of the school board would be $30,000 a year, and the county of Tipton would come up with the remainder of that money. If approved by the board, the director of schools would then work with County Executive Huffman to advertise a job description, get the person in place. But that's the ask, is to add the position tonight, to pay for it out of current funding that you've allocated, $30,000. Grant writer, capital projects, grant writer coordinator, or some variation thereof is the title.
Didn't we hire a grant writer a couple months ago?
Not that I'm aware of.
No?
Now, you may be talking about Ms. Catherine Huffman that's assigned to ESSER,
Yeah.
she has the federal projects. You know, Marion retired. Marion Samuel retired as the federal projects director. Of course, I've got our HR lady over here, but that's the only one that we transferred or changed is Catherine, correct?
Lisa Bradford's our grant writer.
Right, for the state grants. I think you're thinking about the most recent transfer into grants was Catherine Huffman, and that's ESSER projects.
Okay.
We've heard the request. Do we have a motion?
I have another question.
Oh, we can-
So does that 30,000 that the school's putting in, that's money we've already allocated for somebody
That's available in the budget already,
else
yes.
to do grant writing?
Yes, sir. Or for another position that's not filled, basically. That's why he wants to change the name of the title.
Okay.
It would have been an administrative assistant's position.
So does it become a dual employee for the county?
Yes, so, the most recent position we had that way was the school safety director, when County Executive Huffman and Director, Combs hired Poncho Chumley, former Sheriff of Tipton County, always be Sheriff Chumley, but hired Sheriff Chumley as the, public safety director, and he was paid out of both budgets. And so essentially how we handled that was, he was really paid through the county executive's office. Now, I'm not sure how Dr. Combs and Mayor Huffman are gonna work this one exactly, but what we would do, the county would invoice us in December and May, and we would write one check for 6 months worth of salary and benefits. And so.
So we pay benefits, not the county?
The county would pay them, we would write them a
Oh,
check.
okay.
So he was essentially on their payroll, we were just fronting half the money, the district was. When I say we, the school board.
Do we have a motion?
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Farrell, second by Mr. McGann. Are there any other questions about it? Those in favor, aye. Opposed, no. Motion passed.
All right. The last thing that we have tonight is the approval of school support organizations. I want to take this up in a couple different ways, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay. First, I want to mention those who have cleared every threshold of requirement that's set forth by this district's policy. And so those in this motion, Mr. Chairman, would be the Atoka Elementary PTO, the Austin P Elementary PTO, the Brighton Middle School PTO, the Brighton Middle School Cardinal Crew, Crestview Elementary PTO, the Covington High School Ace Club, the Covington High School Diamond Club, and the Covington High School Roundball Club. I would like to ask the board's permission to approve them as a school support organization in that they have met all the requirements set forth by this board and policy to be a school support organization.
Okay, do we have a motion? Motion by Mr. Eubanks, second by Ms. McClurkin. Are there any questions about this? Those in favor, aye. Opposed, motion passed.
All right, the next set I want to take up is I would like to ask for the board's discretion because these next group I'm going to mention to you have met 99% of the requirements, and the other part of the requirement, I'm satisfied evidence has been provided that the information is in transit to us from either Secretary of State or the Register of Deeds. I could not stand before you tonight and say they've met all the requirements, check all the boxes, because I cannot fill that form out yet, but I'm telling you that I feel like they have met them enough for me to bring them to you tonight for you to approve. My only ask, obviously, if they don't do that, then we would come back and revoke that status. But those organizations that I'm asking tonight, at your discretion, that have met all but just maybe one or two, are the Brighton High School Band Boosters, Brighton High School Volleyball, Brighton Middle School Football Boosters, Mumford High School Band Booster, Mumford High School FFA Alumni, the Mumford High School South Tipton Dugout Club, and the Mumford Middle School Motivators, and the Mumford High School Home Run Club.
We've heard the request. Do we have a motion? Motion by Mr. Benson, second by Mr. Gann. Are there any questions about these? Those in favor, aye. Opposed, motion passed.
Now, we still have a group of school support organizations who are still working actively. We're working with them actively to get their certifications. The one that was brought tonight that was not on the list is Mumford High School Touchdown Club. And there's a whole nother list if you want to look over these lists that we're going through. There's about 5 other ones that I anticipate bringing to you next month for approval.
Okay.
All right, are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Speedy Gonzalez, I have.
Hey, I'm trying to get out here.
Good job. Well, this is unrelated,
Okay.
but I was just wondering if you've heard anything in the pipeline. The president of the Department of Education have threatened schools that don't go along entirely with their perhaps Title IX requirement, talking about losing lunch money, lunch funds and stuff like that to districts who don't comply. Have you heard anything about that?
No, sir, I haven't, but if it's lunch funds, it would cycle through Miss Sabrina first. And, but I have not seen, I was at a federal programs training, I guess it's been last week, maybe, or week before last. That was not mentioned. And everybody that has seen anything with federal and state funding in the state of Tennessee was there.
Okay.
And so now, it's not to say that it's not there, it's just I've not heard about it.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Darling? Thank you, Mr. Darling.
All right, thank y'all.
Does anybody else have any other business that they'd like to present? Again, we'd like to welcome each one of you here tonight, and I think everybody is overwhelmed kind of with, we had a lot to go over tonight, and anyway, it'll get better.
Wait till they go to orientation, their brains.
Yes, exactly. So we don't want to forget, we're going to have a picture right here, and then we're going to go to Dr. Bird's office in that area and have another picture, individual picture made, so we can't run off yet. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Have a second? Second by, motion by Mr. Farrell and second by Mr. Jenkins. We stand adjourned.
What piece of document from the touchdown
But